Shay Groves had experienced significant trauma throughout her childhood and adolescence, which the court recognized as contributing factors to her later actions. Born in 1995, she endured physical abuse as a young child, though the exact extent remains unclear. At age 11, she began wearing hearing aids in both ears due to partial deafness. During her school years, Groves exhibited concerning behavioral patterns, including violent tendencies toward both herself and others. She engaged in harm as a teenager, cutting her legs, and on at least one occasion threatened others with a scalpel, while sometimes carrying knives during her younger years. These instances of violent behavior would serve as a sign of things to come. At 13 or 14 years old, Groves was referred for mental health assessment and diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder, though this diagnosis was later questioned by medical professionals. She began using alcohol and substances intermittently and left home in her mid-teens, entering a relationship that involved some degree of abuse. Her life took a more stable turn when she met a man named Ashley Wingham, with whom she had a daughter in April 2017 when she was 21 years old. Around the time of her daughter's birth, she was assessed and diagnosed with complex PTSD, though the detailed findings of this diagnosis were not made available to the court. Following her separation from Ashley, Groves moved to a women's refuge before eventually settling in the Havant property. During this period, she began identifying as a goth, cultivating what the court described as a dark and ghoulish humor, a preoccupation with crime, killing, and killers. Groves's bedroom served almost like a shrine to some of history's most notorious killers. The walls featured framed photographs of serial murderers including Myra Hindley, Peter Sutcliffe, aka the Yorkshire Ripper, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and Rose West. Her bookcase, which was notably coffin-shaped, contained numerous books about gangsters and criminals, including works about the notorious prisoner Charles Bronson. She regularly consumed true crime documentaries, gaining what prosecutors argued was detailed knowledge about crime scenes, evidence manipulation, and alibi construction. Additionally, Groves maintained an arsenal of weapons in her bedroom that she claimed were for protection, but which prosecutors argued were intended for potential offensive use. Her collection included a Celtic dagger, a ball-bearing gun, several axes, and additional knives. She frequently carried a flick knife in the heel of her boot when leaving the house and kept the Celtic dagger either under her pillow or in a nearby drawer for easy access. Fast forward to early February 2022, Groves met Frankie Fitzgerald, a 25-year-old plumber and father of two, during a night out. The relationship was characterized by several concerning elements from its beginning. Both sides engaged in regular and alcohol use, and their relationship was said to have concerning sexual dynamics. They even went as far as to sign a so-called sex contract. In it, the couple agreed that Fitzgerald could awaken Groves through intercourse, but Groves later stated that this was done against her will. Within just 1 month of their relationship beginning, serious problems emerged. In March 2022, following a substance-fueled argument, Groves resumed violent behavior from her teenage years. Fitzgerald, frustrated by their inability to agree and be happy together despite their intense passion, became increasingly jealous and controlling. During this period, Groves engaged in manipulative behavior, falsely telling Fitzgerald and others that she had cancer in order to gain leverage on people as well as receive gifts and money. Medical records later confirmed she never had any such condition, despite attending appointments and undergoing tests. As their relationship deteriorated through spring and early summer 2022, both parties became increasingly jealous and threatening toward each other. Fitzgerald was particularly obsessed with Groves's former boyfriend Declan Payne, who remained in close contact with her. His messages to Groves ranged from expressions of love to menacing threats, including one on May 12th where he threatened to snap Groves in half if she slept with someone else and warned that cancer will be the least of her worries. Around this time, Groves began plotting ways to harm Fitzgerald, discussing with friends various schemes to have him attacked. She also threatened to post explicit videos of their encounters on social media to, quote, ruin his life. The court heard that she was juggling both Fitzgerald and Payne, trying to keep them from meeting while allowing both to visit her house. On the evening of July 16, 2022, Fitzgerald went to Groves's house while her daughter was staying with her father for the weekend. Joined by Groves's friend Lauren White, the couple spent the evening drinking beer and using illegal substances, though neither was incapacitated. Fitzgerald was gambling online and borrowing money, including from Groves. The situation escalated when he discovered pain among Groves's Snapchat contacts at 1:20 a.m. on July 17th. Lauren White, sensing danger, sent a warning message to Vicky Batup, another friend of Groves, about a likely confrontation. A quarrel ensued, moving to the bedroom, which was no longer being recorded after Groves had removed the camera earlier in July. While Fitzgerald was downstairs, Groves examined his unguarded phone and discovered what appeared to be a conversation with a 13-year-old girl on Facebook. What she failed to notice was that Fitzgerald had immediately blocked the individual upon learning of her claimed age, and that the person was actually 17 years old. Groves photographed this conversation at 3:12 a.m., and this discovery triggered a murderous rage within her. When Fitzgerald went upstairs and fell asleep in bed, Groves retrieved the Celtic dagger she had stored nearby and attacked him. The first wound, delivered to his neck while he slept, was immediately fatal. As the pathologist later determined, this blow required only moderate force but caused catastrophic damage. The attack didn't end with the fatal throat wound. In what the judge described as a frenzy of violence, Groves continued stabbing Fitzgerald's already lifeless body an additional 17 to 19 times in the chest and heart area. Following the murder, Groves attempted to hide the murder, drawing upon knowledge she had gained from her extensive consumption of true crime content. She made a half-hearted partial attempt to clean the crime scene and wrapped Fitzgerald's body in a blood-saturated duvet placed on bin bags. After the killing, she initially attempted to deceive her friend Vicky by sending 2 false text messages claiming that Fitzgerald had left the house alive. These messages suggested that their relationship was over and that he had simply walked out on her. Then, approximately 4 hours after the murder, Groves made a video call to Vicky and confessed to the killing. Multiple witnesses described her demeanor during this call as disturbing. She was giggling as she admitted to murdering Fitzgerald. During this conversation, she suggested that Fitzgerald had been, quote, depressed anyway, and that authorities would, quote, just assume he has gone off and ended his life. Groves also engaged in fantasy discussions about covering up the crime, including burying the body in her garden and making the death appear to be self-inflicted. She attempted to implicate Lauren White as an accomplice who had helped place bags beneath the body, though she later clarified that White had no involvement in the actual killing. Vicky went on to call authorities, reporting Groves' confession. When officers arrived at the scene, body-worn camera footage showed Groves attempting to portray herself as the victim, claiming that Fitzgerald had tried to attack her. However, her story quickly fell apart when police discovered Fitzgerald's body upstairs. Upon arrest, Groves made little attempt to deny her involvement in the killing. She told a mental health nurse that she didn't deserve a blanket in her cell because she had taken a man's life, that what she had done was inhuman, and that she would be going to jail for a long time. The investigation uncovered extensive digital evidence that contradicted Groves' claims of self-defense. Most significantly, investigators recovered the edited video clips that Groves had created from her bedroom camera footage. These edited versions were designed to make consensual BDSM activities appear as a rape, supporting her false narrative of being Fitzgerald's victim. The original unedited footage clearly showed that the sexual activities between Groves and Fitzgerald were consensual, undermining her attempts to portray herself as an abuse victim. Investigators also recovered call data, CCTV recordings from other parts of the house, and mobile phone evidence that painted a detailed picture of the events leading up to the murder. The trial took place at Winchester Crown Court, notably the same courthouse where Groves' idol, Rose West, had been convicted of murder in 1995. Groves initially pleaded not guilty and attempted 3 different defenses: self-defense, loss of self-control, and diminished responsibility. All 3 defenses were ultimately rejected by the jury. After a 5-week trial and nearly 18 hours of deliberation over 4 days, the jury unanimously found Groves guilty of murder on February 17, 2023. Upon hearing the verdict, Groves smiled as she was taken to the cells. On February 22nd, Mr. Justice Kerr sentenced her to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years. The judge described the murder as a crime of passion, telling Groves, "You love the man you killed and you killed the man you loved. You are not a cold-blooded murderer. A crime of passion is not committed in cold blood." However, he also emphasized that this classification did not diminish the severity of her actions or their consequences. 13-year-old Kamani Latig lived in a complex family arrangement that would later prove tragically insufficient to protect her. She resided with her legal guardian and grandmother, Dorothy Latig, in Toledo, Ohio, having been in her care for approximately 5 years. However, Dorothy had only obtained formal legal custody about 1 year before the tragic events unfolded. The family structure was complicated by the presence of Darnell Jones, also known as Darnell Ogletree, who was not Kamani's biological father, but maintained a relationship with her and was frequently present in her life. Her biological mother, Tiara Caston, lived in Cleveland and had limited contact with her daughter, visiting only twice a year according to court testimony. The terrible sequence of events began on Sunday evening, March 16, 2025, when Dorothy prepared to leave for her overnight shift at work. Her employment required her to work nights, leaving Kamani alone in the house. This arrangement, while necessary, created a vulnerability that would soon be exploited. According to Dorothy's later statements to police and media, she left for work on the evening of March 16th, expecting to return home the following morning to find Kamani preparing for school, as was their normal routine. While Kamani was very young, she displayed a lot of maturity and was trusted to be able to care for herself. The house appeared normal when Dorothy departed for work that evening. The following day, March 17th, Kamani called Darnell Jones in distress. According to Jones's own account, Kamani contacted him, claiming she was afraid to be home alone and believed someone was trying to break into the house. He said, "I came over here because she said that it seemed like somebody was trying to break into the house." This account would later prove to be a carefully constructed lie designed to establish an alibi and explain his presence at the residence. Jones claimed that he responded to the call for help by driving to the Elm Street home with his cousin. According to his version of events, they arrived at the house and stayed for approximately 1 hour, departing around 12:30 a.m. on March 17th. This timeline established Jones as the last known person to see Kamani alive. The reality, as would later be revealed, was far more sinister. Rather than coming to help a frightened child, Jones had orchestrated a plan to abduct and murder Kamani. What actually transpired during the early hours of March 17th would not be fully understood until weeks later when Jones was arrested and interrogated by police. According to court documents, Jones eventually admitted to police that he abducted the girl from Dorothy's house and took her to an abandoned building on Miami Street in East Toledo. In a burned-out abandoned house at 624 Miami Street, Jones subjected Kamani to a series of brutal assaults before ultimately killing her. The Lucas County Coroner's Office would later determine that she died from multiple incised wounds of the neck, effectively ruling that she had been nearly decapitated. The brutality of the crime extended far beyond the fatal injuries. According to Lieutenant Brian Steele, Kamani had been assaulted and her hands had been severed from her body. Steele described the case as one of the most horrific he had ever encountered, stating, "This is a teenager that was murdered, raped, had her hands cut off, and her throat almost cut off." After committing these horrific acts, Jones appears to have set fire to the abandoned building in an attempt to destroy evidence. Interestingly, in regard to the arson, Jones had a previous conviction for a similar crime in 2011, when he had been found guilty of 4th-degree felony arson for attempting to set a building on fire using a handheld lighter and flammable liquid. When Dorothy returned home on the morning of March 17th, around 9:40 a.m., she was immediately concerned as the front door to the house was unlocked. Once inside, she discovered that the house was in complete disarray, with furniture and personal belongings scattered and displaced. Most disturbing to Dorothy was the discovery that the gas stove had been left on. Other than her and I, it's just 2 dogs in the house. So who cut it on? So that was kind of suspicious, Dorothy later told media outlets. She also found Kamani's personal belongings scattered throughout the house in locations where they would never normally be found. Dorothy immediately attempted to contact Kamani by calling her cell phone, but the calls went directly to voicemail, which was out of character, as this had never happened in the past. Holding out for hope, Dorothy then contacted Kamani's school, wanting to hear that the girl had left for school, and this entire scene was nothing more than a home burglary. When the school confirmed that Kamani was not present, Dorothy's fears escalated to panic. At approximately 10 a.m., she placed a call to police reporting Kamani as missing. Following Dorothy's missing person report, Toledo Police Department started what they initially treated as a potential runaway case rather than an abduction. This decision would later be criticized as it delayed the issuance of an Amber Alert and may have affected the urgency of the initial response. Police Chief Mike Trendley later explained the department's initial approach. We had a lot of different stories about a missing teen that may or may not have ran away for different reasons. It did not meet that criteria because at that point there was not any thought of a family kidnapping or family being involved or any foul play. Despite treating the case as a potential runaway situation, investigators began gathering information about Kamani's last known activities and contacts. This investigation quickly led them to Darnell Jones, who emerged as the last person known to have seen the girl alive. As mentioned previously, Jones presented himself as a concerned father figure at the beginning of the investigation. As the case progressed, inconsistencies in Jones's statements began to emerge. Police noted that he provided inconsistent statements about his activities with his daughter and his whereabouts during the critical time frame. These discrepancies gradually shifted investigative focus toward him as a potential suspect. By March 23rd, police had gathered sufficient evidence to obtain an arrest warrant for Darnell Jones on charges of abduction. The worst fears of the community were realized on March 24th when Kamani's body was discovered in an abandoned building. The discovery was made by investigators who had been following leads related to Jones's known associates and locations he had frequented. Following the discovery of the body, police immediately upgraded the charges against Jones from abduction to murder. A murder warrant was issued and the manhunt intensified as law enforcement agencies recognized that they were now pursuing someone who had committed one of the most heinous crimes in recent Toledo history. The very next day, Columbus police located and arrested Jones in the Victorian Village neighborhood. The arrest, however, was not peaceful and resulted in a violent confrontation that left Jones critically injured. Police had been alerted by Toledo authorities to be on the lookout for Jones, and officers had been conducting surveillance in areas where he might be found. According to Sergeant James Fuqua of the Columbus Police Department, officers had been looking for Jones for 2 days after receiving information about his possible presence in the area. The confrontation occurred near Denison Avenue and West 2nd Avenue at approximately 10 a.m. Columbus SWAT officers spotted Jones and attempted to arrest him, but Jones refused to comply with the officers' commands. At one point, Jones was making statements suggesting he wanted officers to kill him. The situation reached a critical point when Jones reached into his clothing and produced a revolver. According to police accounts, Jones pointed the weapon at officers, prompting one of the SWAT officers to fire multiple shots in self-defense. Jones was struck in the arm, leg, and torso. Despite his injuries, Jones survived the shooting and was immediately transported to a local hospital where he received medical treatment. No police officers were injured during the confrontation. Following his arrest and medical treatment, Jones was held in custody while recovering from his gunshot wounds. The severity of his injuries required ongoing medical care, but he was stable enough to be formally charged with murder in connection with Kamani's death. The legal proceedings are still in progress, but as of now, Jones has pleaded not guilty to all charges. The prosecution has described this as involving one of the most heinous sets of facts seen in over 40 years. Prosecution is seeking the death penalty, stating that this is one of the most heinous cases in the area in decades. And if not this case, what crime would be appropriate for seeking the death penalty? The case has sparked intense scrutiny of Lucas County Children's Services, which had previous involvement involvement with Kamani's family. The agency's handling of reported concerns has become a central focus of community outrage and official investigations. LCCS received reports of alleged physical abuse on 2 documented occasions. The first report was made on December 8, 2023, regarding excessive physical discipline by Dorothy Latigue. The second occurred on March 21, 2024, when 2 separate reports were made on the same day regarding the same incident of alleged excessive physical discipline. During both investigations, officials conducted what they described as thorough assessments. These included visiting the home and conducting physical inspections, speaking with Kamani alone, interviewing people who knew the family, conducting background checks, and reviewing family records. However, LCCS found no evidence warranting removal of Kamani from the home in either investigation. Significantly, neither she nor Dorothy mentioned Darnell Jones during these investigations, and LCCS had no record of his existence or relationship to the family. Prior to the crime, multiple staff from Kamani's school raised concerns about her welfare, but the extent and follow-up of these reports remain controversial. A teacher from Bennett Venture Academy stated she made multiple calls to child services expressing concerns about visible markings and bruises on Kamani. The teacher described the girl as being fearful of going home and noted that she came to school with injuries. Disturbingly, Kamani had attended 6 different schools during her short life, which some community members believe was a pattern designed to avoid investigation when abuse reports were made. Each time concerns were raised at one school, she would reportedly be enrolled elsewhere. As of July 2025, the case remains in pre-trial proceedings. Darnell Jones remains bound to a wheelchair due to injuries sustained during his arrest. He has reported worsening pain, primarily in his legs, but believes he is making progress in his recovery.